Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday, December 1st, 2021, 5:30 p.m. Early start for us. Have some budget items tonight. We're in the town hall, lower theater. There's a Zoom link available. That being said, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 5:33 p.m. Okay, first order of business will be to approve the minutes of November 16th. They're in your packet, so I'll take a motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 16th. Any further questions, corrections, deletions, additions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next item is the additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting. I have none. Scott?
No, nothing for tonight, Peter.
Anyone else on the board have anything? Okay, move along. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Don't see any public here. So
If anybody is able to help us put the big wreath on the front of the town hall, and you have a tall extension ladder, and don't mind working off the ladder, be really helpful. So if anybody's interested, just get into contact with me or Betsy Thurston.
anyone else? What's that? Okay, we'll drop down to the manager's report.
So just a couple items. I think I sent a copy around to board members from the state medical board about some updated information that they're looking at in relationship to cannabis and THC concentrations and some recommendations that they're making based on some of their work. So as we approach, having a informational session sometime later in January, I just wanted to circulate that. So that's where that came from on the email from today. The Festival of Lights is coming up. I believe it's the 11th. And I'm trying to think, Elijah, you might remember the other dates for some of the other downtown events that maybe you might want to just give people a heads up since.
I don't have it all.
I know
right now.
I know. I didn't bring the rest of the list either. I was hoping maybe Betsy would jump on, but I don't see her. So
That weekend of the 11th is also ladies' night. There's a lot of specials the downtown businesses run.
right.
And the next weekend, next Saturday, is not just men's night. Also a lot of special promotions of the downtown businesses. Those are the two that I remember.
Right. So there will be a parade for the Light Up BF that on the 11th, and then as Elijah said, there's a bunch of different events that the merchants are putting together. So hopefully people will take advantage of that, and we'll have decent weather, and we'll have some good turnout for those events.
And shout out to Ben Major for organizing that parade of lights.
Yes, should be a fun night. So that was it.
What's that? Okay, we'll move on to the agenda. First item is the Rockingham Meeting House 2022 capital projects and discussion on each one of those.
So I'm going to hand out a little update, and then Walter's also available on Zoom if he can jump in and sort of walk the board through a couple things. So then once we're done with this, it's just a mini presentation, then we can take questions. So I'm going to hand this out. So Walter, if you want to jump in.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Select Board, for allowing me a chance to present some of the information that arose from discussions at our November Historic Preservation Commission meeting. We were looking over the current fiscal year and thinking about the next fiscal year, looking at what our needs might be, comparing the current year with some known future expenses. So We put together a sheet that Scott just circulated that outlines some of the key expenses and also some of the key income items related to the meeting house. The first items, the meeting house expenses for this year, they're on the left column, and next year thinking about what would be some good amounts to have for making sure that we're on target and on task with being able to pay docent wages and be able to provide for the maintenance and repair of the meeting house per the cyclical maintenance plan. Also on the income side, we've been budgeted typically for about $3,000 a year. And I'm happy to report the last back in 2019 and again this year, it's actually much closer to $4,000. In fact, it's a little over $4,000 and per year. Those are primarily donations that folks make when they come to visit and offer a free will offering to help with the maintenance of the meeting house. So thinking that for this upcoming year, going up from $3,000 to $4,000 on that side. Wages and projects are all tied in with the CLG grant. The project piece is essentially variable. That depends on the project that the Vermont Division for Historic Preservation funds for us. And that last line is the CLG grant income for 2022. We know that we've gotten 14,363. We are projecting that for next year based on the grants with the federal share, which is a 60% share of the budget, will be a little over $15,000, almost $16,000. Questions, thoughts, comments?
Rick. Certified local government.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, CLG. Certified
Sorry to
local
upstage you, Walt.
No. There are so many acronyms that go floating around. When I first started with this job, I started hearing about SHPO and CLG and NPS and viaduct. So I get caught up with some of that jargon myself from time to time, like this evening. Thank you.
And what's on the maintenance schedule? Did the painting get done? It didn't get done, or did it?
Some of the painting did get done. The west side was painted. Part of the east side was painted. We had windows painted on the west side. The current year, we are actually unhappily running a little over budget, and I do not like to make that report, because I generally, as a manager, do not like to go over budget, but we had some expenses. For example, we had 2 window sets that had to be restored, literally taken out and completely disassembled and reassembled with some new pieces at $2,000 per window set, which we had not expected to have to pay. That was outside of the cyclical maintenance plan, which is part of the reason why I thought it was actually closer to $20,000 to deal with any unanticipated expenses.
So it's a good segue to talk a little bit about some of the longer term capital. We did visit in the summer, and Walter and various folks from the Meeting House Society walked us around and pointed out various projects that they would like to see accomplished. And there's a grant opportunity that's sort of a highly competitive, very difficult grant, but I think Walter is committed to us trying to go through that process. So Walter, you want to talk about Save America's Treasures, and then I can talk about some of the things that we also think might also help us going forward.
Okay, the Save America's Treasures program is something that is administered by the National Park Service. As Scott has suggested, it's a highly competitive grant. It's a grant that that has a minimum of $150,000 ask, and with a maximum of up to $1 million associated with it. It's a grant that is very typically only given to National Historic Landmarks, which the Meeting House is. And I was very excited a couple of months ago when I was talking with Devin Coleman, the state architectural historian, thinking that on the state's end that we might be a very good candidate for a Save America's Treasure grant. It's very competitive. It's also something that needs political sponsorship. Probably Senator Leahy, as he's moving on and coming back home, this might be something that he could help get behind in support of a grant that could address, I think, some of the major issues that we have with the Meeting House right now.
So that's sort of the comprehensive grant, and without, we're not sure exactly how that process is going to play out. So we did discuss, Walter and Gary and myself, about what other options might be available. Right now, you've got $22,000 in your capital reserve fund. We're committed to put another $22,000 in as part of the budget process. Walter also needs a engineering study and analysis done on the foundation. One of the major concerns with the property is settlement and its impact on some of the interior plaster where they had some cracking, its impact on the roof, and other major structural pieces of the Meeting House. So Walter, maybe you can give a little bit more detail on that scope of that engineering study.
Yeah, the east elevation, the northeast corner in particular of the Meeting House, has a very serious settlement problem. It's been an issue for quite some time. That's the area that historically has required a lot of maintenance to deal with the cracking of the plaster. And the settlement appears to be not getting any better. Now, when I say appears to be, I will say that I have initiated a motion and crack monitoring program where I have some telltales, and we'll be putting in some crack monitors to keep an eye on the cracking and the movement of the building. But literally the east porch and that side right by the pews on the eastern side are beginning to move quite severely away from the rest of the structure. And it would be, I think, prudent for us to consider having a thorough analysis of the foundation and spec out what it would require to stabilize that foundation movement on the east side. But we had some conversations just to try to educate myself and get up to speed with foundation assessment on a stone foundation such as we have without a cellar hole. It might require the hiring of an engineering firm that would use ground penetrating radar and be able to identify the fullness of the foundation. We're not really quite sure. I've gone through lots of engineering studies that we had done on the Meeting House over the last 30, 40 years or so, and I have no idea really how deep the foundation goes. It's not really been documented. We don't know if there are any, if there's any water movement or anything down below, and something like a ground penetrating study of the foundation and the surrounding ground might help us better understand and come up with a good, solid strategy to stabilize the foundation.
So it doesn't have a cellar hole right now? It doesn't have a cellar, Walt?
It does not have a cellar. It has an
Okay.
approximate 16, 18-inch crawl space. Very few
that
people
sounds
that I
like
know
fun.
would want to venture there.
We're going to get some very small engineers to work on this.
Real small.
Oh, that's where the, that's where
Send the
the,
robot in.
Yeah.
exactly, that's where the ground penetrating radar comes in. There is a technology available to engineers to be able to address that issue that very few people could really get underneath there themselves and scope things out. But to be able to use that particular technology.
Is there any program like one of the universities of engineering that might have, take this on as a project with their students? Or something that might be less, I don't know how much this is gonna cost.
Well,
but
we're looking at probably 20 to
20 to
25,000.
25.
Yeah,
Wow.
so, and
I mean, it might be an interesting project for, to do.
Historical preservation.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think there's also, again, when we get into these Save America Treasures grants, it's a tremendous amount of checklist requirements because of the Department of Interior standards for historic structures. And it's a very, there's a lot of procedure that we have to follow. So we could certainly see if they're capable of doing those types of things. And certainly if they are, it would help offset some expense.
Yeah, UVM has a historical preservation program.
So we can look into that as well. Couple of options just for your consideration. We still have some money coming to us from the solar array that we have permitted and signed contracts for and gone through all that process. I'm waiting for that check, but that check is approximately 50,000. That's the initial payment. If that makes some sense, we could fund that foundation work as well as fund that capital reserve, and you would not necessarily then have to fund that out of taxes for next year. And that's an option that we could pursue, or at least take a look at. The larger work that we talked about, and we just have very basic estimates, but as Walter had intimated earlier, it could be up to $1 million worth of total work to do everything that, the full restoration of all the woodwork inside, the walls, the plaster, the roof, any foundation restoration in the windows. So it's a pretty extensive list. And at this point, we're very, we're going to really put our effort into that Save America Treasures process and see where we go. So
I have a question for Walter.
Yeah, right.
Walter, when we visited in September, you and I were talking about the alarm system there, the smoke detection, so on.
Yes, yes.
Can you remind me that there was some question about whether the smoke detector whether that was a feature in the alarm system?
Yes, it is. It is. I did follow up the question. Thank you for remembering that. That is something I did follow up, and there is smoke detection as well as unwanted entry alarm to it. So yes, that is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On this other sheet you got here, that's the capital plan and projects, there's plaster repair, 45,000. Is that entailing with the meeting house or is that something else?
that's for this building, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, his plaster repair is going to be much more expensive because it's going to be in a
Yeah, no, it's
historical match
historical,
and
yeah.
it gets into a whole different process.
What's the deadline on this grant?
I'm not, Walter, do you know what's our submission deadline for the Save America?
This is something that that is at least a year out.
Okay.
This is something that we're. I like to think ahead and plan ahead, and not come up with something. We have some shorter term grant opportunities that we're going to be pursuing for some work, but that Save America's Treasures program. I believe the deadline that we would be looking at would be sometime in January of 2023 for a due date on that. And I might add that John Lepman is organizing a gathering of folks from the Rockingham Meeting House Association as well as the Historic Preservation Commission to have a sit down sometime probably after the first of the year to have a conversation, to begin the conversation about what are the real needs and just how we might best approach and work together to prepare ourselves for applying for that Save America's Treasures grant. So there are some conversations and trying to get folks on board about so that folks understand the fullness of some of the issues that we have to deal with.
That wouldn't make it difficult for Leahy because he will be out by January
Right.
2023.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to focus
Well-
probably on Peter, or, well, if he wins,
Right.
and Bernie.
I'm sure that Pat will have some sort of potential impact on conversations about it, though.
I'm sure he will.
He's because he's very well, very much a part of the preservation of Trust of Vermont and in general historic preservation throughout the country. So this is something I might imagine that he can help us with. Knock on wood.
Okay, anything else for Walt or on this subject? No? All right, let's
Okay,
move on
thank you,
to the
Walter.
capital projects then.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Walt.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Right.
So we've got, Peter, the next thing we had on there was the, talking about the listers. Because the capital projects was the Save America's Treasures and then the
Oh, okay, because I didn't know.
two
this
pieces,
was-
the engineering study and then putting money into that capital
'cause I
reserve.
was
So
just referring to the sheet. I didn't know if that was,
that's another one. We're getting to that one later.
oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Let's do the listers next.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with that.
So,
They don't need to be sitting here all night.
well, I figured, yeah, we'll try to maximize their time. So there was a proposal in your packet, and I think we've got Camilla on Zoom as well as Paul and Paul in the audience. So we've got a transitioning office, which is unfortunate for us, good for them. And, we've had faithful people that have served our interests well and want to leave the office in a good standing and a good position. So they've been thoughtful in terms of their approach to how they could see a successful transition. And I think with that sort of as a backdrop, maybe, I'm not sure who wants to jump in, if Paul or maybe Camilla, since she's, okay. Camilla, can you jump in from that point?
Sure, I'd be very pleased to do that. I think most of you are aware of how long the continuity has been going on for the Lister's office. So we are very concerned that a lot of the work we've done over the years and built up our knowledge, our training, our understanding of the town. We've gained trust that we're very honored by the public to be able to say, for example, for 2 years in a row, there hasn't been any BCA appeals. It's not, that's some kind of at least recent record. So we're very concerned that good training and support for 2 positions that are opening up on the ballot in March at town meeting, that there's a plan in place that supports 2 new people to really get a good experience, have time and support for good training and some backup for things that are very hard to do when you're still very new at it. So we gave you a budget here that we called option 2 that has outside consulting available. And it puts, it's really a stepstone for a couple of years, probably gradually declining. If it all goes well, you will return as a town to a solid board of 3 listers who can do the next townwide reappraisal. That's the goal. It worked so well. It is possible. It can be done if the right support and commitment for the community service that this is to learn the methods, learn the rules, learn the statutes, learn the programs. It can be done with help. So I don't only add to this that the total $75,000 bottom line in here is actually very close to the budget overall for the Lister's office 2 years ago. So this is not far out of line with what the town has been paying. The last year was an exception, and we really have struggled to do well at the lower staffing level. But all that aside, we're looking forward. I just wanted to note that that number isn't out of the ballpark from what the town has been paying previously. Maybe Paul or Obi would like to add to that.
Paul, can you grab your mic and just flip on your switch so we can pick you up on the.
I can add a little bit to the history of what you have in front of you. It's a result of quite an extensive study on the part of the board. We've interviewed 4 other towns who have different systems than we do, examined the performance of their groups and compared it to ours. I think the thing we first found was we probably did not recognize the strength of the department we had. It's extremely well trained and experienced, and therefore was able to operate with strictly 3 listers. And that seems to be the most cost-effective and service-oriented system we can find. So we would recommend, the ultimate goal of our work is to get this back to a board very similar to what you currently see. We also recognize that 2 new listers, we normally train 1 at a time, but this is a 2 people at once, throws an extra load on. So we're recommending that we follow some steps as we move up through here. So I think you'll find it suggests that we're starting somewhere down between system 2 and 3, and gradually that would decay to be the original concept of 3 listers who are all trained and able to handle the administrative and assessing roles. There are 2 roles to this job. One is the assessment. This is a mathematical series of events that take place every few years. But the part that most people miss is the daily affairs of dealing with the public and the state of Vermont and the government of the town, providing them with information and to straighten out a lot of things that questions. I think we are the question and answer group of the building. So if you read these, the data you have here, it's going to give you the 4 options that are available to the town. Those are mandated by state law. You can do 1, 2, 3, or 4. We also have the budgets for each one of those steps included in here. And as Camilla shows you, we ultimately get to a point where we are running the lister's office at a cost, today's dollars, that didn't exceed what we were spending 2 years ago. I think that's the direction that we have all, the 3 of us have agreed is the best route. We're more than willing to listen to any suggestions you have, but that's our recommendation, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have regarding what we've presented. Obi, you?
I dropped this item on the table last night at the joint board, so our board and the trustees are aware of it. I did kind of touch a little bit on on the basic of the 3 different plans and the cost thereof. So they know, where we could end up and where we may not want to be. So I guess if I'm looking at option 2, and you guys got on there a part-time contracted consultant. Is that the person that's going to be doing the training of the new people, or who's going to be sticking around in this transition? Or are you hoping to get someone in to?
Well, I think as I mentioned to you, we've set this up, or we've presented a program which we think will work. And the strength of that program is that the outgoing listers are not going to disappear. And one of the outgoing listers, Camilla, has agreed to take on the role of an outside consultant. And the reason for that is very simple. When it comes to the administrative duties of our department, Camilla is the strongest player. So she also brings with her history. That's the one element we found missing when we hire an outside, totally outside of town consultant, that they have absolutely no connection to the people of the town or the history of what's going on. So Camilla's agreed to work with us as the administrative or the outside consultant, so that folks can get in contact with Camilla. Camilla can come in, Camilla can work from home, but we have a live source to get the history and a quick solution. The big problem in this business is strictly the manner in which you have to interface with these other groups that are listed on the bottom. We ran into it this morning. A simple thing that to all of us sounds like nothing: don't lose a password. Because to get to these folks requires 3 or 4 password steps. And you're going through departments and people. It's a nightmare unless you have that access, which Camilla generally pulls out of a hat somewhere and says, here's how you do it. I think Camilla's job will be gradually more of a teacher than a participant in the daily activities. But our estimate is it's going to take us a year to 2 years to train 2 new people to adequately handle the residential properties in Rockingham. It'll be a miracle if we can bring somebody up to a level of the industrial and commercial properties in that time. It might not be, it depends on who runs for the office. But whoever does, they're taking on a job which has tremendous potential. This can become a career to a person, so it's not a casual job.
I'd like to also answer Peter in that Paul speaks to some of the specific administrative stuff in the office, but there's training by the state that the state supports, I should say. So that is free for the town. It's definitely expensive for the state. They have day workshops, but they also have support IAAO, which is an internationally recognized training group and professional source for assessment methodologies. And, I have the Vermont level 3. There's only one course I haven't taken. So we can help with assessment methodology while they're learning to do it themselves. It does take years to go through all those courses. They're really good and they really apply, and they're both residential and income approach and sales approach, so that somebody The hope is by the next reappraisal, let's say it's 5 years from now, that group will be able to do it, all the assessment, all the administration, everything the way we did in 2017 and are effectively doing now. It's a combination of learning curve with our help and with those training workshops and all the courses and certifications that are available.
Yeah, it's an interesting sheet here that you got about the pros and cons of each option. So that does help in making your decision. So
Good.
Rick, go ahead.
Paul, how hard will it be to recruit new listers to tell me about that?
How hard is it going to be to recruit?
Yeah.
I think the secret to that is we're going to have to inform potential people of the opportunities that this particular job offers. Personally, as you know, I've been in industry for years. Well, I've been doing this for years too, but I have found the lister's job to be one of the most rewarding I ever had. And had I known what they did in 1964, I might have considered a job as an assessor, as a permanent profession. It turns out that what I did paid off because it helps do this, but this is that exciting, and it is not what most people conceive. Most people do not know what we do, and if you go places, those listers, they're mean old people, and they're not. This is the most fun job I've had dealing with the public, and I think Obie and Camilla have found the same thing.
All right.
So to answer your question, I'll answer it a little bit differently. I think it could be very difficult to find two candidates to run for lister. And I'll tell you why. Is first of all, you basically work between 15 and 20 hours a week. So you work mornings, basically, is the way our office is set up. You're paying, right now, and again, depending on what the board does, $16 an hour for me. Okay, because I'm the little young guy on the totem pole. I get no benefits. So Thanksgiving Day, when the office closes down, I don't get paid for 3 hours or 4 hours. There are no benefits at all. So basically what it really kind of drives, or what ends up happening is you end up with people that are semi-retired, as I was when I came on. And you work 3, 4, 5 years, and then finally you just say, hey, I'm going to be gone for 3 months in the winter to go to Florida. And I want to play golf every morning.
Right.
During the summer. So
Yeah.
It could be very difficult to find candidates. Now, impossible, I don't think it's impossible. I think the real key is, really kind of looking and saying, there's a number of aspects to it. I really look at it as this is service to my community, which I've done for basically my whole life, 30 years on the school board and so on. So this was just another way for me to give back to my community.
Well, first I want to thank you and Camilla and Paul for your service. You guys run an outstanding office. I've dealt with you in various contexts, but do you think the compensation question, to attract someone who will have the potential to perform successfully in this position?
Well, I think that's critical, but I want to throw a positive into what Paul just said. I don't agree with him. Well, I don't agree with him not because I don't understand what he says, because he's right. It's a personal choice for whoever takes the job. But there is a plus. And the plus is one of the things that attracted me. If you're looking for a part-time job with some income, and that can be There are a lot of people out there who can fit into this, who are fully qualified to do it, and it wouldn't disturb their lifestyle. I'm going to give you one example. The parent of children in school has the time to do this and earn money. So the question you just asked about, and I think it is a very, very responsible and rewarding job. The question of money is simple. We're competing with the ladies that you see, the guys that you see working part-time in a store as a clerk. Go across the street. The hardware store is hiring people for 3 or 4 hours a day. That same person could just as easily sit upstairs and be a lister. They're committing their time during the day when the children are away. They go home at noon, the children come home at 2. It's ideal for that kind of a person. And it doesn't have to be an older person. I did it. I retired when I was 65 and came to work for the town of Rockingham as a lister. Because I really looked at, I wanted something to do. I go crazy if I don't have a job.
I know that.
And a responsibility. In that vein, I'm a little over the 65 now. I have committed to Scott that to make this thing happen, I will stay another 3 years after my term expires. So, and that's only because I love the job. I certainly don't think that I'm making a fortune.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
I'd like to answer also. We made you a budget at $20 an hour. You've got to be real about making this a career for somebody, for this town. And they may start in a part-time, and out of the 3, one may become the strong assessor. You know, it may grow and one person really take off on it, and the other people are basically supportive. Who knows exactly how it'll work? But if you don't put $20 an hour into this right out of the gate, you're just not going to get people who are committed to it.
That's true, because just the past history in the last couple of years of people running for any office that's open has been really hard to come up with people in school and or whatever. I mean, it's usually the same old people that run for the same old positions, and
you've got to get out of that box. You have to get out of that box.
I hear you. My term's up in March. I hear you.
We set it up a press release. We were really inviting people. We are trying to get ahead of this and let people know that it is a career job. It is really interesting, and it's worth money.
But I go along with Paul. I do it just because it's a service to my community. I've done it for 25, 30 years between 3 different boards, so I know where he's coming from.
Peter, I just have a quick question. Similar, I think, to the select board is you can't just expect someone's going to fill out the petition and do it. You have to do a little arm twisting, right?
Yes.
We all twisted arms to get people on the board. Are there people you have in mind that you're going to have a coffee with and just lay out, hey, this is an interesting job you may want to consider running for?
Well,
I mean, you don't have to tell me who, obviously. Just I hope that you, in the back of your mind, you have people that you may try to encourage to run.
We're trying.
Well, go ahead, Camille.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're trying. We put out the word timing is important. We got some very interesting candidates that came forward, but it wasn't happening fast enough for them. We just hope there are more. That's why we're coming to you now and really sending out the press release and we have had some interesting people approach us asking questions about it. Now we'll try to get more serious and ramp it up and get them on that ballot.
It might be good if someone can go on the feed to talk about this at some point.
What is
They'd
the feed?
be interested, and
She wonders what the feed is.
Fact TV has a Wednesday program with Marty and Mike, and about things that are going on in town and people in town. It might be interesting to just say this is what the lister does. And
yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
we can do that. We're already drafting an ad for the newspapers. And I don't want to call it an ad, it's an article, the first one. Secondly, we've talked about doing Fact TV. We have had two people who came in and expressed an interest. One of them, as Camilla said, because of the problem of time, took another job in Brattleboro as a director of a nonprofit organization, who literally wanted the part-time job. And unfortunately, she is now occupied. The other person, who lived in Springfield, wanted to apply for this job, and he has moved to Rockingham in order to qualify to be a lister.
That's good.
And at this point, I think as of last week, he was still interested. So we may have one candidate who, quite frankly, he's coming with some relatively strong experiences as the assessment part. That kind of person would really pump us up a little bit. I'm not afraid of this training people. I think we found the resources to do that. We've been in conference with the property valuation and people at the tax department. I've talked to the IOOA training chairman, who I know, about the potential that some of the beginning courses which are recommended in here are now available online and could be done right here in this building. That would be a real plus. The question I haven't answered is who pays for them, whether the state of Vermont would support that approach or not. So I think we can do it. Certainly, I don't feel at all difficult in personally teaching any one of the IOOA courses. So they're not going to be sitting there all by themselves. But as Camilla says, it takes a little time to do these courses the way they're normally taught. Out in the field, you're going to go for a week, and they only offer like 3 courses a year. If you want to take all 3 in 1 year, and I know in my case, I've been taking these courses, this is now my 14th year. And unfortunately for me, there aren't any left. But that's my thing. What makes me happy is to go to classes. So if you want to make me feel good, put on another one.
Okay, is there any other further questions or comments for the listers at this point?
Just thanks, Camilla, for agreeing to stick around and help. I think that's fabulous. I was actually going to ask that. So I'm glad that you said that she will.
Yep.
I
We ask
really
it
don't want to
first.
see all that work that we've built, the knowledge and the solidity of it. Just, it could be lost very easily and very quickly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, we need your help. I think we've said that before. We'll say it again, that you're very influential. You know people that we don't know. And I would ask you to please talk to folks, send them up to our office. No requirement to make an appointment. Just walk in the door. We'll make room for you. And as many questions as they want to ask, we'll answer.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, I also would like to thank all 3 of you for your job. It's a tough job. Nobody likes it, especially when people come in for appeals or anything else. That's always the tough part, to try and explain to them the different aspects. But it seems to have worked, so thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, which is Town Hall Capital Project Review. Your sheet in your packet with all kinds of fun stuff on it.
So just sort of continuing conversation that we had had previously about some of the projects, bringing you up to speed on a couple others that we've been able to segment a couple projects. I think previously we talked about doing the entire roof, and we've had a couple of contractors up on the roof and really have come down to a partial replacement, which I think will take care of the areas that are leaking so that we can then potentially get into the plaster repair and some of the other items that we want to get done but are hesitant until we get that roofing sealed. So the roof has been done in pieces over time, and for the most part, the last two patches that we've done have held fairly well. This section is the section we've identified that needs the most immediate attention. And looking at pricing, it's not going to be a backbreaker, but it's obviously $40,000 is not insignificant. So we just wanted to bring that to the board's attention as we go forward. That number, like I said, then sort of leads into the plaster issues, and you guys can tell in the third floor conference room and other areas of the building all the way down into the theater. We've got areas that need sealing and plaster repair. So if we were able to get the roof sealed and we were confident that we had completed all of the leaking issues, then I think we would be more confident coming back to you to say, yes, I think we're ready now to go forward and do some of these plaster repairs. And I think those two go sort of hand in hand. Control technologies, we still are, as you can tell by the temperature in this room, having some issues with our heating system. There's some lag issues in our boiler that need to be repaired. There's some issues with the circulator pumps. There's a couple of sensors that need to be replaced. Nothing earth-shattering, but when you add everything up, it basically comes out to around a $5,000 expenditure. I just wanted to put that in there just so that you understand that we're not looking at wholesale boiler replacement or updates like we did with the backbone, the HVAC online system, but there are still some issues in the boiler itself. And I'm hopeful that with this grouping of projects that we'll be able to get this thing fully functional. We won't have issues where we're having like now where we have zones that are cold and places where we're not getting proper circulation. Sometimes I get complaints about the temperature inside the theater. Obviously, we're still not getting appropriate circulation in this part of the building. So I'm hoping that these projects will eliminate those problems and get us to a balanced heating system as we go forward. The clock tower, the issue with the clock tower is the facings on the tower itself and some of the structural steel that are supporting the clock faces are showing signs of wear and tear and are probably in definitely the tower, the clock facings need some replacement. Not a simple project. And once you start to do that, then you get into the wear and you can see places where the support steel has rusted and is compromised. And if we're going to try and keep the tower functioning for the next 20 to 25 years, it probably needs a fairly major overhaul. The money that we're asking to talk about just in the first phase is to go in and do the full analysis on each of the four faces to see exactly what has to happen. Some of it, you can see cracks, and some of them actually have chunks of the facing is missing. So we'll have to figure out how that can be repaired, as well as once the facings are removed, what structural repairs or what bracing can we put in to help us, keep the structural integrity of those four clock faces. We're pretty good shape with the electrical and the actual illumination. We worked on that last year, and now we have some LED options, which some people aren't too happy about, but are kind of fun. And I think we're in good shape with that portion of the clock, but this is the next phase of trying to get that clock fully up in shape for our 100th anniversary in this building, which is actually 2026, if just for people's information. The other major items are, again, those projects, which we had started back in 2019, and the contractor is still not capable of working. And at this point, we're going to have to terminate the existing contract and probably rebid the balance of the windows. Just looking at the bids from the last time we did this, the second place bidder was roughly, and we don't have as many windows to do, but that's why you see that number in there of 30,000. That's probably going to then finish out the windows. And you can see, especially in the lower levels, closer to the ground, the frames and the windows themselves are in pretty tough shape. They really need to get brought in and updated and glazed and refurbished so that we could put them back in so they don't suffer any additional damages. So that's where that number comes from. And then finally, the electrical is the ongoing project with the cultural facilities grant. We need to do some electrical upgrades to the panels to support the house light system upgrade, the theatrical system lighting upgrades, and actually there's a couple of locations in the theater themselves where we have circuit issues in the projector room, so we need some additional electrical upgrades in the theater room as well. So that money would cover those upgrades that would then lead to us getting the theatrical lighting purchased and installed and hopefully then up and running for the next round of live shows, which again, if COVID doesn't shut us down with public assembly, we'd be looking at a fairly busy spring of 22 all the way through next Christmas. So they're hosting or scheduling many more live productions for the next upcoming calendar. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the proposed Opera House budget. So that's where those numbers come from. You can also see I put in some numbers that we have issues on that front door. Sometimes it doesn't lock properly. We've had people in to try to adjust it. At this point, it's got ADA issues and other issues, and quite frankly, it would be nice if we could build out some sort of entranceway and marquee and signage that people would have it display more of a traditional theater entrance kind of marquee, where it would be, I think, appropriate to the building, but also then could be ADA compliant. So we might be able to get potentially a ramp, depending upon the, we'd have to do some work with that. And then also some handicapped accessible doors in the front as well. So it would provide options for folks at least to get into the building. And then we would have to do some lobby renovations in order to get them up to the theater level. But that would be the first phase. And those particular improvements do have grant funding available through ADA. So that's something that we would pursue and look to try to do if we're successful with that. Brickwork, there is some identified in the previous reports that we have put off since we started the Windows project. We need to do some pointing and some other updating of the exterior brickwork. And you can see the number, that's around a $30,000 number. And then ultimately, we pushed the entire clock tower renovation project out into a future budget year, either 24 or 25. It just depends upon how much money is legitimately needed to restore and put the clock tower back into 100% functional operation. So those are some updates since the last time we spoke. Just wanted to sort of keep that conversation going, because as we build into our next budget meeting, some of these numbers will start to be reflected in the budget that we're going to present to you on the 14th. So just wanted to give you some heads up as we've worked on some of these numbers that are a little different than the last time we actually presented to you, because we've been able to get some more detailed quotation and narrow down the scope of some of those projects. So those were the particular projects I wanted to bring up to your attention for this building. And if there's any others or any other concerns that you'd have about this building, we'll certainly entertain that as well.
When will we be seeing a draft of the proposed budget so that we get a firsthand look at things and see if we.
I'm hoping to have that done by
like
the
or
end of
don't like
next
it.
week, so I don't have any meetings next week on purpose, so that we can finish that, get it.
Okay, no,
get it
I'm
out
not
to
pushing, but I know
everybody.
that if you look at the calendar, you're
Right.
looking at,
So we'd have a
you
week
know, adoption
before.
at the end of the month, and it'd be nice to look at, you know,
Right.
the first draft so we can see
We should have that out. I'm hoping to have that done by next Friday, so
if
at
we
least I
wanted to
can get it
change
out to
something
everybody.
or delete or
Yeah, Alyssa and I have
discuss
got to go through
with
some
the,
stuff.
you know, with the ARPA funds and the infrastructure, which we don't even know what's up with those.
Yeah, we're
yet.
going to put ARPA off on the side in
You know,
relationship to.
that could have an effect on where we're going with the budget. And if we plan for something and find out we can use those funds, it makes it a lot easier to push a budget
Right.
rather than just throwing, well, here it is, folks, your taxes going up 10 cents, you know. We can get shot before we get started.
Right.
So,
Well, I don't think we're looking at any crazy numbers, but certainly, you know, there's not a lot of things where the prices are coming down at the moment.
yeah, of course, we got, you know, some debt stuff that's going off, so.
Yeah, so there's
not
some
a heck of a
balancing
lot, but
that's happening
we've
there.
got some and some savings over the past year that, thanks to COVID, if you want to call it that weren't able to spend, such as the theater fund and
Right.
things of that money. So there's probably some money we'd be able to steal out of fund balance to.
There's some offsets, and I guess,
Yeah.
you know, part of the issue is like anything, right? We're always chasing these deferred maintenance and questions
Oh,
of,
yeah.
you know, how much money can we invest and be responsible stewards of all of the properties that we own and all the equipment that we own. And, you know, we're not proposing in this budget any new programs. It's really just a maintaining of our existing, you know, the offerings that we currently have, maybe a little bit more focus on some of our capital, just because I think, you know, we need to make sure that we're doing things that, you know, are responsible for maintaining these buildings that are older, quite frankly.
Anyone have any questions? There's a couple of hands up.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The $75,000 for the kitchen down here, do we use it that much? I mean, I'm just wondering what kind of use it gets. Is it a dream that we will have lots of events that have food down here? Or
I think that's a future goal kind of project, because if the Opera House is successful and continues to offer, people might want to combine some catering and some other options and using the space.
Mhm.
But it's probably a secondary issue. In all fairness, Rick, I think we have primary concerns like roofs and
That's what I was gonna say.
boilers and windows and brick facades. I mean, to me, those were sort of more important, but I wanted to bring those other items to your attention because they're worthy of discussion. If we're able to fully utilize the space, it does generate revenue.
Mhm.
It's just a question of, you know, how much money can we realistically invest in capital projects, and what's our bandwidth to manage those projects? I mean,
Exactly.
the other reality of it is we don't have a full-time maintenance person. We don't have a full-time engineer.
Mhm.
You know, we're scraping with our staffing as it is, trying to rebuild some of the positions that are currently vacant. And like everybody else, we're running into a very difficult environment. You know,
Yep.
people are very picky right now. They want to work, what kinds of jobs they want to do, and how much they want to get paid for the work that they're doing. And a lot of that doesn't fit into our municipal model, just to be honest with you.
We know that.
I mean, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but it's a
Yeah,
little
well.
frustrating because,
Yep.
yeah, we've got needs and we've got wants and desires, and we're facing a very different marketplace. I mean, even as the listers we're talking about today,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
it's
So
going to
you
be a
have-
challenge.
No, I just think that it's important that since our debt is starting to drop, that we have some reserve starting to build up in these
Oh, yeah.
long-term plans, so that, I mean, we're not just looking, this has to be done in this next year. We have to think, so what's going to happen in 23,
Right.
24, 25? And so we keep that steady amount in the taxes that is going into maintenance.
Yeah, we're
long-term
trying to
maintenance
avoid
and
those
capital.
spikes where I come
Yeah.
to you and say, I need $400,000, and everybody, you know, clutches their chest and staggers out of the room. And
And if
Yeah.
it's in a reserve fund, we don't have to go back they can pull from it
Right.
through other
Right.
fiscal years.
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
important.
I mean, that's what we're doing with the bridge project down there, and as you can see in your sheets, when we had 50 in there, and we've used some of that up, so. Just and there's, as Scott mentioned, they're starting to drill down there, taking test boring, so.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's moving along. But this building is a challenge because its age and it's, it was not built for modern access. So ADA is a challenge. We have stairs all over this building. We have, doorways that are not compliant. The bathrooms for the most part are decent. At least the public bathrooms do have ADA compliance. But we have issues that we're trying to address, and everything that we're touching costs, more than anticipated in this economy.
And I think it would be hard to get another bond through we're still paying off the last bond, and we wouldn't go to, I think that's why it has to come out of taxes. I mean, in a steady amount of money that's put away to look at these long-term issues.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can manage these in smaller increments so that we're not coming to you with a $400,000 or $500,000, let's go, to the public. I don't think anybody has an appetite for that.
No.
I'd be shocked anyway if they would.
So question for Susan, how much a year do you think we should be, just ballpark, putting into a reserve fund?
Well, I think we have to, what is the total of what that just was for last year? 100,000 about, right? I would say bare minimum 100,000 needs to be going into a reserve.
Into this building? Just this building?
Well, I don't know, in general, because.
In general?
In general, I think we have to look at.
Right.
We haven't looked at the waypoint, we haven't looked at the library, we haven't looked at the other.
Right, we're waiting on the library. He's getting me his information for next week, so then they'll be presenting to you on the 14th. We do have some equipment needs, but I think we've got a possibility to try to do some things with that. We've talked about the train station. That's another conversation that we need to have about how we want to go forward with that project. And then paving, we looked at escalating our paving, which was part of a program that goes back to 2017. And we've been pretty faithful to that. And I think people have seen the results and are very satisfied or happy with what is happening. But it's, we're looking at increased costs now for asphalt because the cost of fuel has gone up. So.
And we're not putting in as much as that original plan was putting in each year.
Because of that increase, I've had to cut back on some of that just because of that, the incremental cost of asphalt. We figured it at a higher rate for this year. So we got our fingers crossed that fuel prices don't spike and make it even more expensive. So.
Well, there's all that infrastructure money getting poured into it, so that might drop prices.
Well, let's just say if we knew what we could spend for it, it's like the ARPA funds, they give you 4 categories, but they don't give you details, so if you stick your neck out and put some project out and budget for it, and all of a sudden
They cancel them.
doesn't qualify, that really doesn't pay off, and so.
But it might be hard to find contractors if there's a lot
that's
of
the
big
other half.
influx in money coming in
Well, yeah.
for infrastructure.
Well, materials is a concern. Every project that we're looking at is delayed with, supply chain problems, and you're 100% right about contractors. They are all busy, and their bids reflect that.
And climate change isn't helping.
No.
That's true. That adds to the workload.
Okay, any other further discussion on?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that any time on my experience with historic buildings, if you can do these projects incrementally and have it's just a steady cyclical maintenance plan, it's way better off than if you do a huge restoration project all at once, because then eventually all that stuff is going to go bad at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I also think the numbers get too large. I think it overwhelms people.
Mhm.
If you really come in and start putting it, like the meeting house, if we put everything together, it's $1 million. Well, I think if you went to the voters, they'd say you're crazy. But if you can get a grant and you can do stuff incrementally and you build it over time, people would say, well, that's reasonable. That makes sense. But
Yeah. And even like this roof, if you can do it in 2 parts, and you can wait several, depending on how good the other part is, you can wait several years so that, they're not both the same age.
right.
Are we going to talk about the library at another time?
Yes.
Next meeting. It's
Okay.
on-
Yeah, he is
if
gonna
you look
give
at
me
your
his-
agenda in there.
All right.
it's-
Yeah, he'll be on.
I was just looking at the same thing because I thought we were talking
He'll be
about it tonight.
presenting on the
I know.
14th.
We've spent so much
I
money in
should
that
have
library
his
in the past
information.
5 years. I'm like, what more could it need?
He'll have his information to me next week, so I'll make sure by the end of next week we get that to you as well with plenty of time before the 14th.
Thanks.
Because that's going to be a busy meeting as well.
Okay, let's move on to the item number 4, which is the Opera House
So I'm gonna
capital and
pass-
operating. There's
Grab
sheets
one
in
of
your-
those and pass it around. So
in your packet.
we
so.
gave you a little bit of information just on our current budget, and then I've worked with Charlie a little bit on projecting for next year. And again, you know, with the Opera House, as you guys are well aware, we are so COVID contingent that we've built our revenues and our estimates based on somewhat what we've seen so far with our movie attendance, which has been impacted dramatically by COVID and by the streaming, you know, first run movies being streamed, which has cut into our attendance. Some of the things, quite frankly, that have done very well are the Classic Film Wednesdays, and some of the advertising and some of those pieces has been very well done through Red, which has been great because those are places where we were struggling as a government. That's not something that we do well. And looking at this basic proposal for next year, looking at, we're not changing anything in our staffing models. We're not changing anything in terms of major capital. The only thing that's really of new cost would be this Spectrix ticketing system, which is somewhat of a leap into the 20th century, at least, if not the 21st, because now people can reserve seats online and do some things with tickets on your phone, things that you are becoming accustomed to when you go to a production or you go to a theater space that we weren't capable of doing previously, and working through, you know, paper tickets and paying at the door and that kind of thing. So there's a little bit of investment in that, but I think it's paying off. We've had pretty strong sales on some of the events already that were using the Spectrix system. So we're pleased with that. So when you look at the overall budget, the board had asked to try to get the operation close to a break even, understanding that they're not covering all of their costs in terms of adding building overhead or some of the other pieces, but they are getting closer to a break even. When you look at his yearly proposal here, we're at a deficit again with this proposed budget of roughly $6,000, which, if all things are being equal, would be, I think, a fairly successful year for the theater. There's some concern, I think, about what our revenues might be on first run movies. We did an average of about 55% of what our normal previous revenue had been, because that's about where we have been coming in with attendance, and a lot of it is specific to the types of movies that are being released, and some of it's related to the digital offerings at the same time that the first runs are being offered. And some of it's related to COVID and changing people's behavior, that people are still not coming into public spaces. So will it change? That's a great question. I don't know. We're still not sure. We're hopeful, but we're still not 100% sure of how that's going to go. The things that I think that that we're looking at, there is still an opportunity for we just got word this week that the shuttered venue grant itself has some additional funds, and Gary and I are going to look into what we might be eligible for continuing operations. So we got the first grant, if you remember, which is about 130,000, I think, in that neighborhood. So we're checking to see what our eligibility might be for this next round. And quite frankly, at this point, anything that they can offer is basically an offset and might bring us into, into the black for potential for, next year's operation. So that would be very helpful.
Scott, how,
It's never been in the black, has it?
A couple times. It has.
Yeah, it's tough because depends upon what expenses you want to, that basically, I can make it look like it's profitable if I
Right,
take
yeah.
away all sorts of additional overhead. We're trying to be realistic about what it can do, what it can support. So.
how is the relationship with Red overall? What's your take on it?
For me, they've been incredibly helpful because he's been able to implement the Spectric system, help just deal with all the traditional process about what offerings, what's the calendar, how things are being handled, who's handling events. They've been easy to work with, and for people that are coming here, I think it's seamless. I don't think anybody has noticed any difference in terms of their experience, but I think for me, administratively, they've been great.
That's good to
They've
hear.
been great to work with.
Thanks.
And the increase to that extra dollar, people have just been not worried about that, I guess, because we had dragged our feet about increasing the fee for a long time.
Right.
It's such a good deal.
It's still a lot cheaper than.
A lot cheaper.
Yeah.
A lot cheaper.
Like half.
Yeah.
Listen, it's a unique place and a unique sort of piece of the community, and it's, I kind of think that we'll never get it to the point unless we create some sort of, something with the south storefront where we have, a restaurant, bar, and it supports, supports the showings. But quite frankly, just looking at theaters across the country, you're seeing major chains and bankruptcies, and you're seeing,
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
real tremendous,
Carnage.
real tremendous upheaval. And at this point, I got my fingers crossed that we can weather the storm, keep ourselves open and a part of the community, and then stabilize ourselves at least to get through this.
Yep.
And cross our fingers that at some point people start coming back to public events and large theater venue events.
Yeah, and it's also important to have it in the town as a public service, really, to the community for people to do something in town.
It's a
Kids
tremendous
something to go to.
resource. It really is.
Yeah.
It's a great
It's a
thing.
unique space. It's a great space.
Yep.
So it's not just for a money-making venture. It really is integral to the community and its needs, I think.
So, I feel pretty good that we're keeping ourselves above water, and, knock on wood, thank goodness for these grants that have really taken some of the pressure off.
Yeah.
And they've helped us with facilities too. So we'll continue to pursue those as well, as many as we can, to try to keep ourselves afloat.
And considering that the ticket sales on first run movies have been only 55% of what they were previously, it seems like they're managing pretty well to balance that.
Yeah, there's certain overhead that we can't escape, right? I mean, showing films, there's a certain cost to rent the films, and there's a certain cost for what we have to staff, and they've been pretty helpful to keep those numbers reasonable. And the live events, the ones that we've had, are doing very well. The Sedaris event was well attended. People really seem to enjoy that.
Yep.
The January event that they're selling, the comedy event, is selling very well. The Follies event that the Rotary sponsored was well attended and people enjoyed. So,
Yep.
we do have some larger productions upcoming in the calendar for next year. So I'm hopeful that we can see some, real revenue from some of that.
You included a couple of revenue and expense sheets in our packet here.
Right.
What's that last column where you want to write says paid 5 November? Is that, I'm just trying to correlate everything. Because right now their revenue is 84,000, and their expenses are about the same, so they're breaking even at this point.
Pretty close. Yep.
So I just wonder what that last column was at, you know, because they got 17,000, or is that what was as of November?
Yeah, we haven't fully closed that month yet, Peter,
Okay,
so.
well, yeah, I just trying to figure out what that
Right.
was, what was trying to be pointed out at that point.
Right, so, I mean, if you look at just overall in November, we're actually slightly ahead, revenues over expenses. Just for,
Yeah, they're running pretty close
just for that
to
month,
breaking
right?
even, but according to the projections here and what you show here for about 6 months, there's about $100,000 difference. Between you're gonna be at about 160, 170,000, and they're projecting 270,000. So be interesting to see how that plays out.
A lot of it is really beyond our control.
Oh,
I'm
I
just-
realize that, I'm just saying, be interesting how that plays out.
I'm hopeful that, like I said, we can continue this, keep it going and weather the storm.
Okay, we ready to move along?
Yep.
Let's go to item 5, which is the Rich Earth Institute Letter of Agreement. In
So
your
we've
packet?
talked about this on a couple of occasions, and Peter and I went on a road trip and did a little field trip down to Brattleboro, and it was actually very interesting.
Really
in
interesting
all-
place.
In all honesty, we were a little hesitant about how this process sort of works, and we were able to get a little more comfortable about how the collection process works, and it's not going to be a problem, let's put it, for people that are coming to the recycling center that aren't participating in this particular recycling product. So we didn't want to make it a real issue, but we felt decent that the way they've done this, and they've had enough success with doing it now in Brattleboro, that we felt pretty confident that they could not disrupt our operation. We found a spot next to the building, and his sketch was a little bit hard for me to reproduce, so I'm sorry if it looks confusing. But basically, it's just going to be a small outdoor area outside of the main building that they'll have their facilities there, so that somebody that's coming to drop off and when they do collection will be out of any of our recycling lines or any of our trash lines. It'll be sort of its own separate site. So,
It says here the town agrees to provide covered space for the collection facility. Are we gonna pay for that?
no, they're doing it.
Well, it says town agrees to provide it. That's why I was just wondering. Doesn't say it's it's on them. I mean, to me.
It is on them. Yes. Yeah, they're building the structure.
Yeah, I mean, because I know that EPDM stuff is not cheap, so.
Right. So all of that is theirs, Peter. The covered space, they're going to be building themselves on that
Oh,
outside
okay.
area.
Yeah, it doesn't
Right.
expressly say that, so.
I can
guess we
certainly
need-
add that as an express understanding that, we're only providing space.
And
They're
gonna-
doing all of the improvements.
So they're gonna try this for a year, you think?
Well, I would assume, this is actually, this proposal actually says from October of 21 through October of 26.
Yeah, so they're a little bit behind, but,
Right. I think
I
they
just
want,
wondered if it doesn't pan out, are we stuck into this for a year? I mean, at 3 months, if we get 3 jugs of
You're in.
of stuff down there, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to continue on with it. I mean, but,
Question.
yes.
So this is, will they be publicized to get people to use this facility? Is there some sort of marketing effort or how?
Oh, yeah,
I
they
just
have a
don't know.
very extensive marketing arm, and there'll be a lot of material about this coming forward.
So individuals will be collecting urine at their homes and bringing it
yep.
here?
Yes.
They have toilets specifically to separate all that. So you
Really?
don't really, oh yeah, no,
Right.
you wouldn't believe the lineup of stuff they got down there. Like Scott said, it was an interesting move.
I'll take your word for it.
No, seriously.
Well,
it's just-
we were, yeah, but it was
but
interesting.
It's
put it that
interesting,
way.
but then you
Okay.
bring that jug down there and it's sort of a handle, sort of like this, you push down and it sucks it out of your jug and off
Really?
you go,
So
yeah.
do they give out the jugs?
Yes.
You have to buy a jug or?
Most of it, from
Not me, but,
most of it, I think that they are supplying. They get a lot of grant support because this is a, it actually, they're getting money from the Long Island Sound people because their issue is the more that they can remove this from the waste, that it's a hydrogen issue. It doesn't get into the waterway, which ultimately goes to the sound and causes hypoxia. So
It's really good for your garden.
they've found multiple uses for it.
Yeah.
I mean, if.
Yeah,
I've been-
they had
I've been-
little
in the
garden
summertime,
patches
I
you could
always
look
pee
at
in a
and-
jug and put it
Really?
in
They didn't
my
offer
Yeah.
us anything to eat, which
And-
was okay.
compost down so fast.
Okay.
They did have a little display with a garden, and then they had some hors d'oeuvres. I noticed Peter didn't offer. Didn't try any of the hors
You
d'oeuvres.
didn't either. So let me push
All
it
right, I'll
on
admit
me.
I didn't either, but they were there. So, but yeah, again, this is it's a kind of different type of recycling, but
They did have a video that they showed the gentleman actually using this machine that's a stand and
Uh-huh.
the lever works and all that stuff. And,
Huh.
did we ever get that? He said he was going to send us one.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably
All right.
So, but
pretty simple to operate, but
Right.
Okay.
it just shows them.
How it works.
but it's
So-
it's not a messy. Our concern was like most
Right.
anybody's concern, right? You don't
Spilling
want
it
it to
all on the
look like a
ground,
public
everything.
restroom and a
Yeah.
mess all over the place,
Yeah.
and it's unpleasant. And it really isn't. And so,
That was
So the two of you feel good about it, is that?
well, I had Larry there as well. So, because Larry was very skeptical, because he's like, I'm working here. I don't want to handle this stuff. I don't want any part of
Yeah.
it.
Well, that
And
was
I
the
don't
main
blame
thing
him.
was, if you had to take the jug actually and pour
Right.
it in something.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
the food scraps
Goes all
are kind of
over,
a
you know.
mess.
No, that would not be nice.
Yes, that's
Then
another.
then when they
I'd
showed
forget
us
this
that,
guy.
yeah, it looked
I
interesting,
don't know
but
what to
Okay.
make it better, but it
Well,
is
we're
a
working
mess.
on something for the recycling proposal for next, for the 14th. We're working on some things for that.
Yeah.
For the food
To
scraps.
improve that program.
Yeah, that
They
needs
had,
help.
they had to handle barrels of pee. I don't think
No,
it'd be
they
so
will not
good.
touch anything, and it's
No.
a pretty.
that was
just
a concern.
a
question
There's
that
no
somebody else
water
had
down
asked
there,
me
so if
just a
it's
number
building
of
on,
Yeah,
what are you gonna
start with that.
do? Drive home in your car without, nah.
Yeah, that doesn't
Doesn't-
sound nice.
And quite frankly, it's a voluntary program. So, the people that participate are the kind of the true believer types, right? They're the early
Right.
adopters for, people that recycled first, people that food scrapped first. I'm sure there'll be the same folks that'll line up to do this. So,
I want to say this is why I
Yep.
came tonight.
oh, great.
Okay.
Laurel, you want to grab a mic? I think I'm sorry, there might be one over there.
It's blinking at you, it's the season.
Well, use this one.
Okay, there you go. Thank
Yeah,
you.
if you got a red light, that's great.
Right, I'm Laurel Green. I'm a resident here in Bellows Falls. I'm also on the Conservation Commission. And this is one of my babies on the Conservation Commission, really moving to get what we produce here from the nutrients from our bodies. Let's not pump it down the river and cause problems down in the sound. All the nitrogen is really useful and is going to be collected and used in farmers' fields. They also are doing lots of scientific studies with the urine that's collected. They're working with, they've had National Science Foundation grants and working with various universities to do better than what we've been doing in the past. And, in the light of climate change and all the other changes in front of us, we need to look forward instead of backwards. And exactly, it is a volunteer program. And the Conservation Commission is going to work hand in hand with the Rich Earth Institute to do a lot of public education. So I just wanted to say I'm very much in support of this. And when I heard from Arthur that it was coming up tonight, I knew that I wanted to be here.
That's great.
I might miss the Grinch, but that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laurel.
And I'm sure they would be welcome, other select board, I've seen it as well, but I think they would welcome other
Oh, they
visitors.
would definitely welcome anybody who
So-
wants to come and tour the facility or have any other questions. And
It's
it made me feel better to go there.
Really
And I think
interesting.
Peter felt better
where is
after
it?
being
It's in
there
North
too.
Brattleboro?
It's,
What?
in Brat by the, as you're going towards the Pepsi plant, off of there,
Yeah,
near their,
you know
near
where,
their
you know where
recycling
the
center.
food place is down there. You just take that turn, just keep going, you'll see the sign right there.
Old
You can't miss
Ferry
it.
Road.
Yeah, on Ferry Road,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting tour to go through all the machinery they got that they're
Really?
developing down there,
All
yeah.
right, I'm
Yeah,
going
I
to
think
check
the
it out.
public education will be really important because I'm sure a lot of people will be bewildered by this.
Yes,
Yes.
it does take a extensive amount, and they're very good at the marketing, and they've
Oh,
got
yeah.
a pretty extensive library of stuff, and they're very anxious to get this going. So
So if we approve this
So I was
agreement,
just
when
gonna
will
say,
they?
we need a motion to approve this,
yeah,
agreement and authorize the manager to sign the document.
yep.
All right, I move to approve the agreement with Rich Earth Institute and authorize the manager to sign.
I'll second that.
Second, motion's made and seconded to approve the agreement and have Scott sign. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Just, Sue, just to sort of give you some sense of timing, we've been talking about trying to build the superstructure possibly in December, so it might be up and running by January. If we really don't run into a tough weather stretch, we can probably get it done.
Good.
So they can get it done because we're not building it, but anyway. Thank you for that.
Okay. Item 6 is in your packet.
Thank
There's
you.
an updated budget calendar in here.
Right, so I just wanted to give you guys just an update. A couple people that couldn't make tonight's meeting, so I had to push a couple things to next week. Is the library obviously was one, highway will be another, and I just put times on there for a general purpose since we're starting at 5:30. Then we'll have, like I said, we'll have our regular budget to look at. The goal is Alyssa and I are going to be working on that all next week. I'd like to have it out to you by Friday, so you have a full week to go through and peruse and, make sure that you've got time so that when we meet on the 14th, it's a productive meeting besides the department presentations, which take time. And then ultimately we have the 28th, and we can also push to the first meeting in January. That would probably be about as far as we can go, because after that we have to start publishing warnings. So we really get into a time crunch after that. So
Okay.
Okay.
Let's move on to the last item here, which is financials. It's in your packet. Anybody notice anything that was interesting, or? I noticed there's a few things that are off whack, but we've already discussed those, such as the tech and technology.
right.
And things there. I don't know if anybody else caught anything. I know there's a few, but going through it all, it looks like we're pretty much on par. Where we should be at this point.
Yeah, the
5
big
months
the big
in.
thing that'll be probably the biggest mover in terms of cost for us is going to be the FEMA reimbursements, and we're still working with them on that. I'll have some information as an update just to talk about on the 14th. And that just takes time, but we have spent money, it's reflected in here, and ultimately, that'll get reimbursed. So
I just had a question about the zoning permits, which I just don't know if there's a delay in things getting posted to the website, because I noticed there was one that went up today or recently, and the time to comment on it is already passed. And I know I've seen other projects that seem to be happening without seeing any zoning permits for them. So I don't know if things are just not being posted. Are people just not applying and they're doing these jobs, or we're not getting the fees? Because that seems, I see a lot going on and I'm not seeing that
well,
reflected
a
in the
couple of
fees.
them were people that were doing work without a permit, and now we're going back and trying to retroactively, catch up kind of thing. So, but I'll check with Chuck to see if there's some other stuff that is, not getting done on a timely basis.
Scott, on the tax sale revenue,
Yep.
we budget $18,000 a year. I mean, is that presuming that it was done yearly? How is that number? How is that arrived at?
It's basically, it's a historic number. It varies depending upon what we actually do with tax sale. And I think, we've got a fairly large number now that we're working with. So
We haven't done any in 5 years? Is that right?
2018, I think, was our last tax sale. So some of that bled into 2019.
Okay.
So
3 years.
we're into the third year of taxes, right? Roughly, if you think about it.
So is that $18,000 build up over 3 years? I mean,
No.
how does that work?
I think we put it in there because we really thought we were doing a tax sale this
Right.
year, and we
The
didn't.
and then
intent was
when-
to try
when,
to do that.
As I say, the past administration
Right.
said, well, we'll do it in-house, and that never materialized, so
Right.
there, here we sit.
I see.
So it hasn't been in there every year. as
Oh,
a
okay.
2000.
Thanks.
No,
So what
it's just-
happens generally is if there's an item that's overrun, it's probably been still on that account and offset another, you can move that around, move
Right.
funds around like that.
All right.
So it doesn't show it here, but I mean, because you look at the elevator one now, that's 50,000, the elevator's been completed. That was a grant we got, but I don't see any offset expense unless it's someplace else.
Well, it was previous year, so
Yeah.
that money's already been spent and,
So
Okay.
it's-
right.
You have to kind of be careful when you're going through some of this stuff.
Fortunately, things don't always come in, you know, so they bleed over and create, you know, receivables and due tos and due froms.
The other
and-
good thing I saw in here was the recycling is pretty close to making a break on it.
Well, I think the revenue
We're about
increases
20
that you,
grand off, I
with the
think, if you
changes
take,
in your pricing helped.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that's working, so hopefully.
And I
I
think,
noticed the permits are a little slow. I guess I gotta put my cop hat on again. Get out and start pushing.
A question again about the FEMA. We're a 5% match on that, correct?
yes,
Okay. Yeah, when we get it.
right.
Okay, is there anything else?
Oh, the other thing was, one of the trucks that,
All those trucks, yeah, that's something we've never seen before,
Mhm.
I think.
no, the trucks
Oh, the trucks.
that
oh.
was really out of whack on expenses.
Yeah, there's
The
one
dump
there, yeah.
truck. Is
Well,
that
no-
one that we're replacing, or is that one that got,
Well, we bought
Totally
the used
destroyed.
truck this year. Is that the 67,000 that you're referring to?
No, there's one that had
No.
like about 12 or 15,000 or 20,000.
24,000 or something?
But that was the
repairs?
body and something else, I think. I
We had
called
an
Andy
insurance
about that 'cause
claim.
I caught it. He said there was something to do with there's an accident or something with that one, so.
Right.
probably
There was an
take-
insurance
the
claim that
insurance.
paid us
Funds back for that one.
19,
Yeah.
almost 20,000 back on
Yeah,
that
'cause
one.
I caught it. I go, what the heck
Yes.
was that? You know,
Right.
just-
That's
the
what
way it
that one
written,
was.
It just turned the light bulb on.
Yep.
But yeah, I did notice there's a 4-year-old truck in there that had $6,000, and then there's another one that was 6 years old that had the same amount of motor repair money, so kind of hunky
That's funky.
there. That
Yeah.
a 4-year-old truck would have the same amount of repairs, but
Well, you have to look at hours as opposed to mileage on a lot of these trucks, right? When they idle or if they're it's hard to tell.
so.
And sometimes they put things like chains and other things that they're buying for that truck
Right.
in
Yeah, I
that
know.
line. So it may not be a repair at all. It might be
Yeah,
something.
but it's still a cost.
Right.
Yep.
And Scott,
Okay, anything else about the finances?
I've just got one.
Yep.
You were talking about rebidding the technical support contract 4 or 5 months ago. Is that?
I've got another contract vendor who's interested in that, and it's given me a number, and it's almost exactly the number that we currently have. So the question, we're not going to save any money. The question is, do we think we might get a better overall product from a new vendor? At this point, it's still kind of up in the air. So we have to make a decision on that by the end of the year.
And is that based on the number of calls, or you just pay for support?
You pay for equipment, so you pay for servers, you pay for PCs, you pay for software, and you pay for web monitoring. So there's a lot of cybersecurity aspects to this that we're paying for as well.
Okay.
And we know that's important. Other towns have had lots of issues.
Well, yeah,
Like $100,000
Yeah, that's-
disappearing. What was it?
yeah, we have a real liability with cyber. It's a real concern. Yeah,
Yeah,
some towns
a lot
have
of
really had
personal
a horrible,
information on that.
had a horrible experience with stuff. So it's a concern.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Anybody got? Okay, let's kind of wrap this up a little bit. Review, there are no bill orders and bills of warrants. We did those the other night. Review agenda items for the December 14th meeting. You got the budget items on there.
Right, it'll pretty much be mostly I don't
So
moment that I'm aware of.
anybody has anything they particularly like to throw out there, just give Scott a buzz. Review agenda items for the joint board, that's off in March, so we don't have too much to worry about that for another couple of weeks. Let's go to other business. Rick, start with you.
Nothing, except for I sent you guys an email about working with the Greater Falls Connections about an educational session about cannabis.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to get that going.
Very good idea.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
the information, plus what Scott sent out too was
Yeah, I
interesting
saw that,
reading.
Scott.
Yep.
Thanks.
So
No, all set, other than I want to thank everyone who's done a great job on making the town look fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guys have worked hard and the weather's been helpful. They've caught up on quite a few projects
Yeah.
and yeah, they've done a nice job.
And all
So
the
I-
decorations and everything.
I'll
It's
pass that
beautiful.
along.
Yeah, it looks good.
And let's hope we don't have a rainy season.
yeah,
Not flooding.
Yeah, yeah, none of the F word,
Ice.
please. Yeah.
I'll come back to myself. Do you have anything, Bonnie?
Nothing.
Elijah, nothing? I got an email today from our favorite village president.
Ah,
Something about, she's complaining about the EMS services.
yes.
Want to know if we got any reports from them or like run times. I guess there's people complaining about Golden Cross not being able to get out to places or not being available when when they're needed and calls.
Sean McGinnis and I are going to go out and meet with their president. He has some time next week, so we're just waiting for him to confirm a date, and we'll go through some of that with him. We have to renew a contract.
Yeah.
The
that's the
issue
other
is,
question. I
and
can't
you
remember,
get-
when's that come up in June? Is that up?
It'll
in-
actually be up in January.
Yeah, actually, okay.
But the issue is, as you guys are well aware, any additional coverages are going to cost you more money.
Because the last time we went up to Claremont, and of course, that gentleman that runs that is now the mayor of Claremont, so that.
Really?
that
It's taken us a little
complicates
while to get an
issues.
appointment. He's a little busy during the day.
Oh, so you're gonna run both issues, but, or who's running
Who's running
the
business?
show now? That's the point.
Right.
But basically, we went up to the same region 3-4 years ago when Wendy was here. We went up, but basically ended up being the tour facility and, oh, look at all the toys we got and everything else. And
Yep.
the subject never got around to, okay, why aren't you getting the service up and type of things.
Right.
The other thing she had said about the fire departments in their mutual aid contract. I said, I told her that was a item for the fire committee. I mean, they got
Yes.
to talk about that because the fire chief set up their run cards. We have
Right.
nothing to do with that. So,
Well,
Same
we
issue.
talked about fire department challenges last night. There's some real big money
did
coming
she
down the
include you
road.
in that email?
Yeah.
I did get one about the Golden Cross, nothing
Okay,
about
but
fire.
Okay, you want
Yeah.
me for the, no,
Right.
you don't know, you know now, so.
Right. And, and those
Okay.
things
So-
impact your budgets too. Those are
Yeah.
big money,
Yeah.
big money items. So
And Scott, the question I asked last night about the fire chiefs meet, I've been picking up that there's some lack of communication among the three departments. Is that true? Or is that just gossip?
it's kind of like, we have the armed services and they're all in the service of the United States, but they all have their individual territories and turfs
Yep.
and responsibilities. And when you have three fire departments, you run into some of those same types of problems.
Turf battles.
And so, they're good people. I don't want to impugn anybody's integrity. They're doing a lot for us as a community, but we've got some tough issues we're going to have to face coming up.
Okay.
So I would anticipate this board will be active in some of those conversations.
Right.
I think it's been better, actually, in the past. I think it's always been a challenge, but it seems like it's been somewhat better, and especially now
Working towards it.
reacting this.
We're trying.
committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, there's no need for an executive session, so I guess we can take a motion to adjourn. In a
Second.
hurry, Rick?
Me either.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we're out of here, folks. Thanks.